What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Wednesday night real estate recap where we talk about everything to do with the housing market and some other stuff. Got another great live for you guys tonight. I don't know if you noticed, but I did change my thumbnail and my title this morning because I found an article today that I thought was really interesting that I want to talk about with my guest. And if we have time, then I'll bring up the other articles from earlier in the week. So if you did see a different thumbnail for the last 2 days, you're not seeing things. I did change it this morning, but maybe we'll get to it all. And before I bring on my guest, I also wanted to say that next Wednesday, the night before Thanksgiving, might be my last live for the year. I just have a lot going on in December, got kids coming home, family stuff, holidays. So if you are watching this on the replay, consider joining me live next Wednesday night from 6 to 7 Eastern Standard Time. I would love to have you. It's a lot more fun when you guys come on live and you ask questions and you interact and you comment on the articles. So if you're watching us on the replay, just consider it coming on next Wednesday live. Okay, I'm going to bring on my guest, but before I do, let me tell you a little bit about him. His name is Keith Lucas. He is a 25-year veteran in the real estate industry and a broker owner for over 22 years. Is also a sought-after national speaker who brings a wealth of knowledge, sharp insights, and plenty of real-world experience to the table. Fun fact, when he's not talking real estate, he's either trying to outsmart fish on the water or debating whether mac and cheese qualifies as a vegetable in South Carolina. I kind of think it does. Let's bring him on. Hey there, Keith. How you doing?
Awesome, Caryn. Thank you so much for having me here today. I am thrilled to be here.
So you are where? You're in South Carolina, but whereabouts?
South Carolina, just outside of Charleston, about 10 miles, and it's dark out. It's
dark out here. I know. It's dark out here, too. I was actually in Charleston about, I don't know, I think like 3 or 4 years ago. It's super cute. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a fantastic place to live. I've been here now about 15 years, and I think they're going to have to take me out of here feet first. I mean, that's the way it's looking.
Where did you come from before that? Where were you?
I was in Florida prior to that. So I made the trek like so many other people do from Florida to South Carolina. Kind of wanted that seasonal thing back in my life, but I did not want to shovel snow. I didn't want to scrape ice off my windshield. And I like wearing flip-flops for most of the year. So South Carolina was a good choice.
It's, you know what, people love it. I know a lot of like my colleagues that are thinking about retiring down there. They just love it. It's kind of got a little bit of everything, a little culture. You got the water. I mean, I thought it was super cute. It might be a little too Southern for me. It was very Southern. My impression was very Southern when I was there, and I'm really like an East Coast girl, but hey, you never know.
Hey, there's a lot of East Coasters here. And, just another fun fact, South Carolina is the #1 destination for retirees leaving Florida. So there's a lot of folks down there that are kind of trying to get out of the microwave and come here. Fantastic place. Come give us another shot. Come on down, spend some time. You'll love it.
And by the way, I know that it is also on the East Coast, but you know what I meant, a little more north. Okay. I'm going to bring up this article. I do see, we have one question for Charleston, which I'm going to bring up now. And I also see your question about prices. We're going to get to that because it's going to be part of the article. But first, you could probably answer this. Slipping Jimmy says, I'm looking at Charleston for retirement. How are the taxes?
Actually, the taxes are really favorable for retirees here. #1, when you hit 65, you get your homestead exemption. So not $50,000 right off of your property tax, which is a nice thing. Also, they just bumped up to about $30,000 per couple that you can actually deduct from your retirement income. So that's really nice as well. We don't tax Social Security here, which is another, big benefit for people that are usually on a fixed budget at that time in their life.
Yeah. Sounds good stuff. All right, let me bring up this article. And then I will get to the home price question, but it may be answered here. Okay, so this was written today. Like I said, I had another article, another thumbnail, and a title. And when I saw this today, I thought, well, this is interesting. Let's do this one. And I have the follow-up one from Fortune, and then we'll see where we're at. So it says home prices may fall 20% as the housing market thaws and help get baby boomers moving, research legend says. So I'm going to skip down to the part where they're talking about prices. Okay, price declines and baby boomers. Whitney, and they're talking about, oh my God, I'm spacing on her name. Meredith Whitney. Okay, Meredith Whitney. Whitney was dubbed the Oracle of Wall Street after correctly predicting the 2008 financial crisis, which was precipitated by the collapse of the massive housing bubble. She predicted house prices would fall by 10 to 20% from here. She predicted house prices would fall by 10 to 20% from here and urged the government to sit back and let that happen because that would only lower them to 2020 or 2021 levels. Homeowners would likely despair a sharp drop in value of their homes, but many have built huge amounts of home equity over time, she said. As for why younger millennials and Gen Z are struggling to get on the housing ladder, Whitney pointed to homeowners in their 60s and 70s staying put. The problem is the baby boomers own 60% of the housing stock, she said, referring to single-family owner-occupied homes. They're not moving. The older people aren't selling. They have no place to go, she continued, adding that they can't afford to move. She highlighted increases in property taxes, homeowners insurance, and homeowners association fees as one source of financial strain, especially for those on fixed incomes. Whitney described the situation as a generational schism in an CNBC interview last week and warned there will be a real standoff between sellers and buyers until more inventory becomes available. Several economists have predicted a silver tsunami as baby boomers sell their homes to downsize or move into care homes, increasing the available supply of single-family homes and reducing prices. However, a recent survey found that 54% of older Americans intend to remain in their current homes for life, while only 15% said they plan to sell in the next 5 years. Now, before we even get into this, as I was doing more research after reading this, I found the Fortune article that I was talking to you about. So I want to bring that one up because it goes into a little more depth of kind of really what she was saying rather than just the generalities. But what is your just first reaction to this?
Well, I think it's got a lot of mixed information in it. You could be an oracle one day and then you're a bum the next day.
Right.
And so, when we look at this and kind of drill down in it, because that's kind of where I specialize is in the retirement segment of the markets, there was 300,000 plus retirees that relocated last year, which means that they sold a house. Now, that only represents just under 10% of the total homes that were sold last year. But that's a pretty significant amount. But when you get to the other statements in there as well, that yes, the boomers, they do own more homes than the Gen Xers and millennials put together. So, yes, the silver tsunami is a thing, but it really hasn't happened with over 10,000 people turning 65 years old per day. And that's all the way through 2035. That should, give us a lot of inventory, and you would expect the, supply and demand thing to kick in where prices would come down. But I don't think we're really seeing that.
I got to agree with you. And I've heard this silver tsunami is not the first time. They've been talking about this for months, and we're like, okay, we're waiting. But it doesn't logically make sense to me, to be honest, that all of a sudden there's going to be so much inventory from all of these baby boomers, and the demand doesn't equal that. So there's going to be less demand and more inventory, and it's going to be this massive flip in home prices to go down 20%. But they get a little bit more clear in the Fortune article rather than the Business Insider. So let's just take a look at this for a second. So it says the Oracle of Wall Street says home prices need to fall 20% to end the generational schism. Very different need to fall than will fall. And this first part is just what we just read, but then it goes down to here. So what it will take? Well, home prices have to fall. Whitney said prices need to drop about 20%. But that price decline would only take us to the price levels of 3 or 4 years ago before the pandemic and its corresponding housing boom. Plus, people would still have a lot of equity in their homes. Whitney explains it would not be a housing crash. At this point, it doesn't make sense for a lot of people to sell their homes because they have either locked in a low mortgage rate or own their home outright. Like me, the first part, not the second part. To give that up would likely mean a much higher mortgage rate and a much more expensive home. Considering an unwillingness to sell from older generations, by the way, I'm not a boomer, but I did lock in my rate. Just want to clarify that. Sorry, where was it? Considering an unwillingness to sell from older generations that leaves fewer homes for younger generations to buy, those that are for sale are, in some cases, unaffordable because prices continue to rise since supply is tight and mortgage rates are higher than what people are used to. In some cases, people list their homes at exorbitant prices and sell if they get an offer, or stay if it doesn't meet their expectation, Whitney said. Sales are depressed. This drives me nuts, particularly at the middle and lower tiers of the market, whereas luxury is sort of carried by all cash offers, she added. Something has got to give in the regular market, Whitney added. I think you're going to start to see home prices go down. For homes to be affordable, that's going to happen. Okay. Thanks. I think we knew that. For to be more affordable, prices have to come down. Sorry, I get a little bit irritated with these people that just say these like blanket statements like they're true. But let's continue. Whitney says she wrote a letter to whoever won the presidential election telling them that they have to let home prices drop. And it wouldn't be the end of the world for one because demand may be overstated. She didn't provide any other details on the letter. In an interview with Fortune earlier this year, Whitney says she sees home prices falling 30%, partly because young single men are living at home playing video games. It just gets better and better. Yeah. Unless you're creating a household, there's no reason to buy a house, she told me at the time. Not me, the writer. That's just one part of her prediction. The other phenomenon that could lower home prices is the so-called silver tsunami, which refers to baby boomers and the supposed millions of homes that'll flood the market in the next decade as they age and downsize and their home ownership rates decline. The two together would mean more supply, less demand, and falling prices, Whitney said. Fair enough. But it wouldn't be a housing crash in her mind. Instead, it would be almost a reversal of the soaring prices fueled by the pandemic and once ultra-low mortgage rates, she argues. But here's the thing. Home prices almost never go down. And in our current housing cycle, a shortfall of homes to the tune of millions is fueling that trend. If the situation were to reverse itself, as Whitney has predicted, through supply that outweighs demand, it could be plausible that home prices could fall. But others in the industry have dismissed the silver tsunami phenomenon, suggesting the incoming supply, freed up by baby boomers, wouldn't be overwhelming and would be offset by younger generations who want and need homes. So, yes, if there is more supply than demand, home prices will certainly go down. And we are seeing that in certain markets that were oversaturated, like the Austins and the Boise's, where now there is more supply than demand and home prices have come down, especially from the peak. Not necessarily lower than they were pre-pandemic, though. What do you think, Keith? I know I'm talking a lot.
Yeah, well, again, there's a lot of mixed information in there. Pardon me. And I think a bigger component really is the mortgage rates. You know, we saw those dip down back in September, and there was a lot of movement, you know, through September and October. And then they started ticking back up, basically in anticipation of the upcoming election. But also that discount had been baked into the rates because everyone knew, well, pretty much everyone knew that the Fed was going to lower their interest rates, which are at best loosely tied to the mortgage rates. But the mass media, or, you know, mainstream media loves to say that they're tied together, like, you know, a hand in a glove kind of a thing, but it's not accurate. So I think mortgage rates coming down are going to help people become more comfortable stepping off the curb and to buy a house instead of watching homes on their screens every day. And seeing those price variations and fluctuations. Again, as you said just a minute ago, every market is different. I mean, it could be different on one side of the street than the other side of the street, literally. So, you know, it all kind of depends on where you are in the country, where people are moving from. Okay, we see a lot of folks that are coming down from the Midwest, the South, the Northeast, even California. You know, they're relocating, and which means they're selling. Now, a lot of these people, they need to sell because of a life-changing event that's happened, whether that's a job, a marriage, a death, a birth, whatever it happens to be. So there's always going to be people that need to move. Last year, we hit just over 4 million homes total being sold in the country,
I know.
which is like the worst it's been.
Yeah.
Yes, since
Like 30 years.
1995. I mean,
Yeah.
that's low.
Yep.
So, I think everyone really pumped the brakes in most parts of the country, and they took a wait and see kind of attitude.
Yeah. So, moving on, I don't want to say your name wrong. I'm so sorry. Mo on Faze D. I apologize if I'm not saying that right. When do you see the prices will possibly drop? Next year sometime. My question to you is, where do you live? Because I think it is just so specific to each market. Where I am in the DC area, if you're in my area, I do not think, and I'm a crystal ball, so don't hold me to it, but I do not see home prices going down. We just don't have enough inventory where I am in Montgomery County, Maryland, DC, Northern Virginia, to cause home prices to come down. And what I've seen recently, like literally since the election, the last 2 weeks, is a lot of activity start to happen. I'm seeing things like people are coming out of the woodworks. They're starting to talk about next year selling. They're starting to talk about buying. They're getting pre-approved. I've just seen activity tick up recently, which tells me that in the spring, where I am at least, it's going to be a really busy market. So where are you? If you're still on, let us know where you are. And that would help us possibly tell you what we think will happen. What about where you are?
Yeah, well, our market here is pretty much like your market. You always have people moving into your area because of all the jobs that are there, the government and everything else. We're a destination market where people are coming here for retirement, or they just want a warmer climate. They want lower taxes. They want, a different lifestyle. They like the Southern hospitality, all that good stuff. But even here, there are builders who are still giving out incentives. And we talked about this off camera the other day.
Yeah.
And I just got an email this morning, actually, that I wanted to share with you, is that,
Sure.
because we talked about, what they are possibly offering potential buyers here.
Yeah. So these are for new builds in Charleston or outside of
This is
Charleston?
new builds, basically, yeah, in this part
Area.
of South Carolina.
Okay.
And what they're offering, and it's not dissimilar across the entire state and really the Southeast, but this particular builder, and we'll leave them nameless at the moment,
Okay.
they're offering 4.5% interest rates and 4.99 interest rates on select homes, which is pretty much going to be the move-in ready homes.
Right.
They're also offering the 2-1 buy down still, which I found very interesting as well. Because, a 2-1 buy down, if folks don't understand what that is, the first year they give you 2 points off your mortgage. The next year they give you 1 point off your mortgage. The third year, well, it goes back up to where it was supposed to be originally.
Right. So are you seeing, this is from builders, are these homes that are already built, or are these to be built?
They're a mix.
Are they trying to get rid
actual
of inventory that they're, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Are they trying to get rid of inventory that is not selling, and that's why they're giving all the incentives? Or are they looking to the future, like, we're about to build all these, we're not sure if we have the buyers for it, so they're offering the incentives in advance?
Great questions, but reality is something a little bit different.
Okay.
We're getting these messages, these emails all the time now because, well, we're in the 11th month of a 12-month year, which means that a lot of these companies, builders, run on their fiscal year as a calendar year. They need to unload this inventory in order to, well, make their books look better. They have projections as to how many they're going to sell. And if they're not really on target, they need, some more sales. They're going to make these offers out there. And it's not just like at the mortgage rates or the buy downs, but they're offering other incentives as well. And a lot of those other incentives, well, an existing home seller can't compete with those, especially if they're in the same community or close by it. So imagine the 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath home that's brand new is going for X, and the same house down the street is going for Y, but the builder can offer upgraded countertops,
Right.
or, landscape lighting or irrigation, whatever it happens to be, fences. So it's tough for folks to compete with that to sell their existing home.
So are you seeing a lot of price reductions on existing inventory? Because where I am, it's such a mixed market. It's literally house by house. I had one sale recently that sold in the first couple of days, went way over asking. And then I had another one that literally the buyer got it, for about 70% of the list price. It's literally house by house. A lot of it depends on condition, obviously price, but condition does play a big part. And I think because right now money is still so expensive, so people don't really, when I say that, I mean, like, if you're going to borrow money, it's expensive. And also labor and supplies are expensive. So people don't really want to do the work. They want to buy something that's ready to move into. And those homes are really selling. Now, you do have people that always want to fix something up, but in general, that's what I'm seeing. What about you?
Yeah, we're seeing here in basically the Southeast, prices continue to escalate. Yes, you do see some deals and steals out there, but they're very, very far and few between. What you're seeing are people that are pricing their homes well for what they're actually worth. They're in good condition. They may have some amenities by them, like a good school, or there's some other kind of attraction that's nearby that people want to be near. And that demand hasn't really slacked off, which is telling the sellers, hey, our price is going to stay pretty well firm. Yes, there are some people that try to game the market where they'll be
Right.
like, hey, here's a $2 million house, but you're in a $600,000 neighborhood. And, they
That's what
basically just keep reducing the price and
right.
reducing it
And they
until
keep
finally
chasing the
it
market.
sells. Yeah.
So I have a question for you. So I've heard Meredith Whitney, she's been saying prices are going to drop for a long time. She was saying 30% a couple of months ago. Now she's saying 20% or 10 to 20%. And her reasons are, one, we discussed about the silver tsunami that you and I both agree, it just doesn't, and not only us, seems like a lot of the experts agree, it just doesn't seem like a realistic expectation because the demand would still be there by younger people trying to get into the market. And then the other one, what was it, that young men are living at home playing video games?
Hanging out in the basement. Yeah, those guys are scary, but
But what do they have to do with the housing market? So they can't afford a house, so they're living at home. I have to find that because I was like, I
yeah,
read
there
that.
can't be that many single guys living in the basement of their parents' house. I mean, I just don't see that as being a very big segment of the market. There are folks that are grappling with, college debt or any other kind of debt, maybe medical bills and things like that. Those folks are always going to be a little bit different, a little bit more strapped in situations that they can afford or maybe not afford. The national average of homes keeps going up every month. Okay. Now, of
The
course, you're
prices,
taking
yeah.
those from, the metropolitan areas, the biggest ones in the country, and they lump them all together. And that's what they come up with. But when you get to places around the country that are not in the middle of nowhere, there are destinations for one reason or another. We're still seeing strong pricing taking place. And again, like I said, if they're in good shape, price well, they're moving.
So yeah, and that's the same thing happening here. So yeah, this is in an interview with Fortune early this year. Whitney said she sees home prices falling 30%, partly because young single men are living at home playing video games. Unless you're creating a household, there's no reason to buy a house. I mean, anything that she's saying in this article that I read logically would make sense if it were true. What I don't see is the data backing it up. Like I said, what I've experienced, and like you, I've been in the business a long time, 22 years working full time as a real estate agent. And what I've seen recently, literally, I thought we were done for the year. I thought we're going to have an election and we're going to have Thanksgiving, then the holidays. Like, basically told my accountant, like, we're good till the end of the year. I was very, very wrong. As soon as that election happened, I don't think it mattered who won, activity picked up, not just for me, but a lot of my colleagues. Like I said, people are like, okay, now we know what's going to happen, whether you agree with it or not. And we're not going to talk about politics because we don't do that here, but we know what's going to happen. So people are ready to move on with their life. And like you said, whether it's, through a life decision, getting married, getting divorced, having a baby, retiring, downsizing, upsizing, they want to buy a house and possibly sell a house. So I'm seeing activity increase. And I actually want to bring up the Redfin article because it says something similar, but gives us some data. So let me just bring that one up. So this is what one that I originally was going to do before I changed the thumbnail. So it says existing home sales post biggest increase in nearly 3 years. And this is written 5 days ago. So it talks about home sales are going up month over month in October. And I'm just going to skip down a little bit because that's about home sales, but it also talks about home sale price increased 5.2% year over year in October, the biggest annual gain in 6 months. Now, these are national numbers. When Redfin takes their data, they take it nationally. They do get more specifically towards the bottom of the article, and I can show you that in a minute. But in general, and it's different in every market, we know real estate's very localized, but in general, home prices are still going up, and our affordability crisis is at an all-time peak. I mean, it's bad. It's very, very difficult to afford a house right now. I told my guest last week or the week before, like, I couldn't afford to buy my own house right now. It's the
Yeah,
truth.
well, that's a case for a lot of people. And going back to the other article for a second,
Yeah.
the reality, I believe too, is that, we go through cycles. As you mentioned, we've been doing this for decades now, and we've been through cycles, and we're just in another cycle. And what will bring us out of the cycle? We don't know. I mean, the last cycle we were in, we got thrown into chaos by COVID. I mean, no one expected that market, but that was another cycle. But if you go back further, there was previous cycles where we had the housing crash, that whole thing kind of happened. Stock market tank, that whole thing happened. So it's typically either a natural event or a synthetic event, that is man-made event, that will affect the market. And right now there's nothing pulling it either way. It's just kind of levitating right where it is, if not creeping up slightly.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you're right. In both circumstances, I mean, during the pandemic, I don't think anyone really knew what was going to happen, how long it was going to last. So they tried to stimulate the economy. They gave people a lot of money. They made money super cheap to try to stimulate the economy. It worked. It worked really well, really fast. Then they tried to fight inflation by raising prices, making money more expensive. And then back in 2008, well, that was a lot because of the lender issues. And we don't have to get into that. But that was also kind of like, what's the word? Like, not orchestrated, like it wasn't intentional, but it was definitely at the fault of, in my opinion, the lenders that were giving out loans to people that really shouldn't have had them and couldn't afford them, and therefore eventually couldn't afford them. So man-made,
I've got a funny story about that real quick.
Yeah.
I owned a piece of property in Georgia, and there was another piece of property that was adjacent to me that was vacant and it was for sale. And I wanted to buy it. And this was back just prior to that housing bubble thing. Now, I spoke to a local real estate agent, the one who actually, helped me purchase the house there, even though I was in real estate. I bought that property using an agent. And I expressed my desire to buy that. And she asked me, do you have a lender? And I said, yeah, back in Florida, but not here. And she said, well, come with me. And we literally went to a bank that was in a trailer. Okay. The wheels were taken off, but it was a trailer. They were building the actual building on the same site. But I walked in, met the guy, and told him what I wanted to do, how much I wanted to borrow. He said, do you have a checking account with us? And I said, no, I don't. He said, you have a check with you? I said, I do. He said, well, make out a check for $100. I'll open up an account and you'll have that money in your account tomorrow. I woke up the next day and I had money in my account that I had never seen before. That's what I didn't sign anything. I did not apply for anything. That's the way it was back in the day. Now, yes, I could afford it and I did afford it and there was no issues, but there were a lot of people out there that, well, we call those, of course, the liar loans from back in the day, where people would just come in and make up a story and say, hey, I've got, $10 trillion million sitting in the bank,
Yeah, when I bought my first home back in 2004, I think it was something like that, we did stated income because as a real estate agent, our income is not always relative to what we actually make, after we get all our deductions and this and that, whatever. And so they just said stated, you just state what your income was and you get a loan based on that. That went away pretty quickly. Jeff Underwood, approximately 1 in 3 U.S. adults ages 18 to 34 live in their parents' home, according to U.S. Census Bureau data. I'm not doubting that. I'm not saying that people aren't living at home. I just was, and I didn't mean to make fun of that all, so I apologize if that's the way it came off. I'm just saying, I don't think that's why home prices are going to go down, because there's young adults living at home. Therefore, there's no buyer demand. So the supply will be more than demand, and therefore home prices will go down. That's all I'm saying. I don't think that that's the reason. I think that everything at the end of the day comes down to supply and demand. And there's just so little inventory right now that even with people living at home or maybe combining households, it's still not matched up, at least where I am. I know it's not that way every place around the country, but where I am, the demand is still higher than the supply. And so home prices are still going up.
Yeah, one other thing that has become a trend here in the Southeast is, and it's been happening around the world for millennials now. And I don't mean the age millennials, but I mean, thousands of years millennial. I mean that they're doing generational housing. Okay, so you're getting 3-4 generations living in the same house, where typically the young generation will go off on their own, go buy their own house, do their own thing. So I think maybe some of these numbers coming from the Census Bureau might be a little bit skewed, I guess, depending on who answers the door. Okay.
Yeah, it's possible. And also, so sees that because they're taking care of elder parents, that's possible. That we don't have enough information to really to know, and then I was just sharing a recent article about it. I understand. I appreciate that. Listen, I love it when you guys share your information, ask questions. It's why I do these lives, because I love the input. So please keep bringing me information or questions, because I really I enjoy it. I just, I think that a lot of times people try to play, not people, us, but like these experts try to play this guessing game about what's going to happen. And sometimes they're right. I think in reading the article on Meredith Whitney, the Oracle of Wall Street, what she's saying, if it happens, makes sense. If we have a lot of inventory from the baby boomers and we don't have a lot of demand because young adults are staying and living at home, yeah, home prices will go down a lot because the supply will outpace demand. I mean, it totally makes sense logically. It just is a lot of ifs, and I don't really like to live in like that world of like, if this happens, then this will happen, because I don't know, if it doesn't, then what? Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, where are we?
Yeah, and was kind of surprised by that article as well. And what caught me there was she wrote a letter to the unknown president
Right.
at that time. I mean, who are you writing a letter to then if you don't know who the president is? But how is the president or anyone else going to make housing more affordable? And I'm not going to get into the politics side of things. Okay, we'll leave that totally alone. But that's not reality. Okay, that doesn't happen. They don't come in with a magic wand and say, poof, okay, now homes are going to be affordable. They're owned by individuals. Everyone has their own right to their property and to do with it what they want for the most part. And that means selling it at a certain price. So I find that kind of, funny to read that about the Oracle. However, when we were
talking about this earlier, when it comes to builders, that could tell a different story. If builders were given, I don't know, some incentives, or if labor and supplies was less expensive, also, I don't think it's going to happen. But if somehow that became less expensive because of whatever reasons, the new administration was going to make it less expensive, and if their margins could get bigger, then maybe they could bring home prices down, and rather than giving incentives, bring down the home prices. And then that creates a new comp, and then that spreads and spreads and spreads, because an existing home is not going to be more expensive than a new home in the same neighborhood, and that will bring home prices down. So there is a world where it all could happen. And I do think we do need to see something happen. And I do think we have seen the market soften where I am. I think everywhere. I mean, we're not where we were 2 years ago, where it was just insane. Interest rates got more expensive, money's more expensive, people can't afford the same, buyers got more picky, and I'm so glad they did. I just think that there's just a lot more to it.
I think, the government may be somewhat stymied by the ability to change housing prices to a certain degree, but who's not, and what I'm seeing, especially here in the Southeast, are corporations stepping in, and they're helping their employees find and not only find it, but give them affordable housing. So I'm not sure if you read this a few weeks ago when it came out. There's I think it's in California, Costco out there is building a new store. But on top of that, they're building 4 stories above it, of which 2 of those stories need to be for their employees to be able to live. And the other 2 stories, they'll be able to rent out at a nominal rental fee. But it's the workforce that's being really impacted. And people are, the people in the workforce, the folks in the food industry, in the hospitality industry, teachers, first responders, they're getting priced out of the towns that they're working in or counties that they're working in and getting pushed out. So we're seeing some of these corporations coming in now and providing an answer and saying, this is what we can do and we will do in order to create more affordable housing for the workforce. And that's probably the majority of the folks that are really struggling right now to afford a home.
I did not see that. I do love hearing that. Do you remember where in California?
No, I could probably Google it and find out, but it was.
No, I didn't see that. I think it's interesting. When you first started talking about that, I was thinking the opposite, about the investors that were coming up and kind of buying all the homes and then renting them out at whatever price they wanted to. But you didn't say that at all. You said something good that was helping.
No, that's another big problem that we've got, is the corporations buying stuff. And we see that in Florida a lot too, especially with the places that have been affected by the storms, where those with the whole, not the amenities, but the assessments that are coming in. People I know are stuck there. They can't move because their building is in terrible shape, and builders are coming in offering, they're lowballing offers for the entire building. They'll just raise the whole thing, take it down, and put up a brand new one for multi-million-dollar units.
Yeah, I mean, when you're saying that, it also reminded me that a lot of people are now dealing with higher property taxes and higher insurance costs because home values have gone up. But we're not selling our homes right now. We just have to deal with these higher, life, costs. I just got my escrow assessment. I just got a notice from my lender saying you have to put in another $1,000 because your property taxes went up, your home insurance went up. So we don't have enough in your escrow account. So please just send us that money. I didn't know that was coming. It's just out of the blue. And yes, my home has gone up in value, but I'm not moving. So in theory, that's great. But in practice, I have to come up with $1,000, this week. And I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I mean the taxes. I mean they're always going to go up. A lot of people like to move to states, and I'll just pick on Florida here for a minute. Florida that doesn't have any state income tax, but they make it up in other ways. They will get their money, so they make it up in property taxes, and they make it up in the taxes for your personal property, for your cars and jet skis and boats and motorcycles and RVs and everything else. They get it one way or the other. But when you start getting those compounded rates coming in for your insurance, for your mortgage, and not so much your mortgage, but your insurance itself, then it's like you're scratching your head and you're like, get on the phone. Can I find someone else that could do it cheaper, better, everything else? And what a lot of people don't understand is, and they may have forgotten this because they haven't bought a house for a long time, but if you change insurance companies, guess what? They want that whole year's premium up front for your first year. So, all of a sudden you're thinking $1,000, it's going up. I'll see if I could find it better. You get a quote for $5,000. Guess what you're paying your very first payment? $5,000. So,
yeah. All right. So people are curious what's going to happen in 2025. I mean, I'm going to bring up this other article that, let me bring it up now. I hesitate to share some of these projection articles because a lot of times they don't tell us anything different. And we get really excited, like, oh, you're going to tell me what's happening. And they really don't say much. But let's just see what it says. So the NAR, which is the National Association of Realtor Economists, weigh in on home sales and mortgage rates and how the election results, the economy, and changing buyer demographics could impact your real estate business in the year ahead. So they go on to say the last years have been tough for many people. Okay, we don't care about that. Home sales to rise. With improving job numbers and recent gains in the stock market, more Americans may be motivated to act. Lawrence Yun is the CEO of the National Association of Realtors. The chief economist. Yun predicts an uptake of nearly 2 million jobs for 2025, another 2 million increase in 2026, which could bode well for the housing market. 23 and 24 are both difficult years in the housing market, Yun said, but pending home sales eked out a 3% year-over-year gain in September, a signal that maybe the worst is over. Other good signs, inventory of both new and existing homes is increasing, and the U.S. population has grown by 70 million from 95, even though home sales have remained mostly at 1995 levels, signaling pent-up demand. His forecast over the next 2 years is in 2025, existing home sales to rise 9% year over year, new home sales to jump by 11%, and 26, existing home sales to rise 13%, new home sales to increase by 8%. So if all these new transactions are happening, somebody can afford to buy, right? Whether it's home prices are coming down or interest rates have gone down and money has become cheaper. Let me see what else. Mortgage rates to moderate. So let's see what they're saying about that. The trajectory of mortgage rates will have a major bearing on how the housing market will fare. According to Freddie Mac, the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage has ranged from 6.08% to 7.44% over the past 52 weeks. Yun says the rates should stabilize at the low end of that range for 2025 and 2026. Now, I know some people were hoping that rates would dip below 6% next year. I don't know if that's going to happen. The Fed Reserve announced its second rate cut of the year on Thursday, reducing its short-term benchmark rate by 1/4 point. The Fed is anticipated to reduce its interest rate an additional 4 times over the next year. Like you said, it doesn't mean that mortgage rates are going to go down, but it does. They do kind of like reflect one another, usually, not always. This time, the Fed cut rates and mortgage rates went up after the election. Hopeful buyers who may be waiting for lower mortgage rates likely won't see that anytime soon. Mortgage rates will not decline in tandem with the I should have read this first. With the Fed rates cut, he said, blaming the bloated budget deficit as the reason. With a large budget deficit, there's less mortgage money available. The government is borrowing so much of its money. A large budget deficit will prevent mortgage rates from going down to 4%, as they did during President Trump's first term. Factors that could change June's forecast: a reduction in the budget deficit, an easing of housing regulations. That is one of the new administration's campaign promises. Holding up home builders, or significant increase in the labor force to help lower inflationary pressures. That is the opposite of one of the campaign promises by, I don't want to get into politics. In such cases, mortgage rates could come down quickly. Nevertheless, the locked-in effect of homeowners feeling stuck in place with 2 or 3% mortgage rates from recent years will lessen over time. True. You pointed to 3.5 million new babies born each year, as well as the 1.5 million marriages, 700,000 divorces, 3.5 million people turning 65, and 25 million job changes that take place each year, all milestones that often trigger real estate moves. All true. This is a little bit more my speed. I like to deal with numbers, and because just the way my mind works. I'll read a little bit more and then we'll talk about it. Home prices increase slowly after rapid rises. While homeowners have enjoyed record-breaking equity gains, home buyers have been struggling with affordability. Very true. A typical homeowner has accumulated $147,000 in housing wealth just over the last 5 years, according to NAR's research. As a result, the spread in median net worth between homeowners and renters continues to grow. It stands at $415,000 for homeowners versus $10,000 for renters. Wow. The strong price increases cannot be sustainable for another 5 years, or America will be divided. With only a few getting to experience a tremendous housing wealth, Yun said, if we bring more supply to the housing market, home prices increases will not be as outrageous and will be more in line with wages. His forecast is in 2025, the median home price will be up 2% over 2024, and in 2026, up 2% over 2025. And once again, these are national numbers. I'm a little shocked right now, the 415,000 for homeowners versus 10,000 for renters.
Mm-hmm.
Is this new information for you? You seem like this is not new information for you.
Yeah, I saw this the other day, and actually, what I kind of goes hand in hand with this is a little bit lower down where it says a different type of buyers emerge. We're seeing that, yes, first time home buyers are aging. That is, they're buying their first home as they're getting older. And
Yeah.
that, is not the guy hanging out in the basement playing video games. Okay.
Right. Yeah. It
This
says the
is,
median first age of the first time home buyer was 38, an all-time high.
yeah, look, people are, even though we went through some of those marriage and divorce statistics a second ago, people are waiting generally a little bit longer to get married. Okay. They may be living
Yeah.
together, but that doesn't mean that they're buying a house together, although we do see that a lot. But still, if you're a first time home buyer, and don't forget what really the definition of a first time home buyer is, it's someone who has not owned a house in the last 3 years. So then
Really?
you
Not
qualify.
someone who's never owned a house?
Well, they don't specify. They just say first-time home buyers, which when you're telling me first-time home buyers, it could be anyone that hasn't owned a house in the last 3 years. That's what the mortgage industry looks at to
Gotcha.
consider you a first-time home buyer. So if you go for a mortgage and you haven't owned a house in 4 or 5 years and you're 37 years old, well, you're a first-time home buyer. That's typically what you see. I don't know how accurate this is as far as whether they've owned homes or not in the past, but I think that we are seeing people a little bit older buying homes. Even though we're in a destination area here in the Southeast, we saw kind of a flattening of second home owners. There was a lot of people that wanted to buy a second home, and a lot of them did, in the early 2000s, 2010, 2015. Because when you could buy them back then, you were able to rent them out. You can use them as an Airbnb, a VRBO, whatever it is, short-term rental. And a lot of places, especially in the Southeast, have really clamped down on all of that altogether. Okay.
What do you mean? You mean there's more regulation saying you can't rent them out?
Well,
Or?
yeah, a lot of regulation, which means that it becomes near impossible to go ahead and buy one of these second homes. Not that we're really talking about second homes today, but I'm just saying overall in
No,
general,
it's
with
interesting though.
people's ages,
Yeah.
they get to a point where they can accumulate enough to have equity in their homes, like we just talked about a second ago, or you did, and they're taking that equity and putting it to work for them. So, the amount of people that are eligible to do that, that can do that, and with the regulations that are now coming into play, it makes it tough for some of those homes to be sold. And because they were built as short-term rentals.
This is
So,
interesting. When we're talking about the different type of buyer emerges, not only are they older, like we just spoke about, but many buyers are skipping the mortgage. With the sizable housing equity gains, many owners who experience all cash buyers have surged to record highs, accounting for 26% of home sales over the past year. 31% of repeat buyers paid all cash for their next home purchase. I have 4 transactions in the last 10 days, all 4 cash.
yeah.
I just was
And
thinking
even,
by the way, not me, I'm not buying them, my clients. Wish it was me. But I was just thinking that, like, it didn't even occur to me. But as I was reading that, I'm like, interesting, all 4 different price points, different age buyers coming, but all cash.
yeah, well, even for the all cash buyers, when you're looking at turning it into a money making property, it's becoming more and more difficult to do that. You can do that long term a lot easier than you can short term. But that's why people, especially in the Southeast, were buying these second homes and more than that, because they would rent them out. It would carry the cost of the property, and they would get their investment back. So, yeah, there's a lot of interesting dynamics, a lot of different movements here, and that's why it's been so hard for anyone to answer a question. Where's the market going? What's it going to actually do?
Yeah. And Slim G says scary times. And I think he's referring to that disparity between the renter and the buyer. And that is scary. I mean, I've got, 2 kids, both of them in college. Like, what's going to happen to them? It's not just about us. It's about our children and their children, next generation. If the disparity just gets wider and wider, I mean, it just doesn't bode well for most people. And that makes me sad. It says here that 25% of first-time buyers use a gift or loan from a relative or friend for their home purchase. 20% took money out of financial assets like stocks, 401ks, or cryptocurrency to afford home ownership, and 7% use inheritance money for their purchase, a record high. First-time buyers are coming up with the highest down payments in nearly 30 years at 9% in order to afford the higher home prices. The number of
I like
multi-generational...
the next one you have there. The single women buyers continue.
Yeah, I know, I'm getting there. First, let's do this one. The number of multi-generational households surged to an all-time high of 17% over the past year. I've seen a lot of that too. I have a couple of friends of mine that their parents have moved in with them. I don't know if it's necessarily for a financial reason, much as they just want to take care of their parents. I don't know that much about their personal finances, but I have seen that a lot. This says that the number one reason is for cost savings. They're combining incomes in order to afford home ownership. They're also buying a multi-generational home to take care of aging parents or because of young adults are moving back home. Single women buyers continue to outpace single men buyers. A drop in marriage rates has triggered more consumers to enter the market on their own. Single women held a 24% share of the home purchase market over the past year. For single men, it was 11%. Well, because they're all playing video games, right? Aren't they at home playing their video games?
Exactly. It's the guys in the basement. Come on, guys, get out of the basement.
I'm not surprised by that. I think that women are incredibly powerful and smart and good with money. And I'm not saying men aren't. Don't hate me. I'm just saying that in my experience, my female friends, not just now, but throughout my whole life, has always been much better with money and than my male friends. So I guess I put that out there. I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't argue with the facts. And, for single women doing 24% of the share of home purchases in the country, that's a lot.
That's a lot. It's like one out of
that's more than the boomers. That's more than the millennials. I mean, that's more than the Gen Xers. They've got to be one of the leading, consumer groups in the country purchasing real estate. Yeah.
So what my take, and then I want to hear what you think, Keith. We live in different areas. I mean, both, in the East, but you're in the South. I don't know if you consider Maryland, DC, the South. Some people do. I don't. But anyway, we're different areas, different demographics. What I'm surmising from all four of these articles is that things may change. They need to change. We have an affordability crisis. This is for sure. The disparity is just going to get bigger. It's going to get wider unless something changes. If, like I said, builders can create enough inventory to offset even existing home prices, that could help. If mortgage rates, and I think that a lot of it depends on inflation and the job reports, but if they can come down a bit so that people that are locked in, like myself, I refinanced in 2021 for 2.865. It's just cheaper to stay in my house than to sell it and go buy something of equal value that's going to cost me a lot more. But if they came down enough, and I'm just making this about me because I just know myself rather than hypothetical, and I was, incentivized enough to make a change because it wasn't going to cost me more than I could afford, then I would sell my house, creating more inventory. And I know I'm not the only one that feels that way. I'm kind of at that age now where a lot of us are becoming empty nesters and could possibly downsize or move, into the city or to the beach or just make a change. And I always thought I would be one of those people. I always thought that as soon as my kids went to college and my youngest just went this fall, that I would be like, okay, I'm done with the suburbs. Off I go. My kids thought the same thing. And they're like, so you're staying? I'm like, well, yeah, because it's much cheaper for me to stay here than to go to sell it and buy some new. Even though my home value has gone up so much in the last 4 years, it's still at the end of the day about the monthly payment. And at the end of the day, I know this house, I've been here 19 years. And for what I could get for the same monthly payment, not the same purchase price, it would not be as good. So
yeah. I mean, you're absolutely correct. It's the old adage, right? When's the best time to buy real estate? Yesterday.
Right. Or when you
Not
can, when you can afford it.
right.
I,
Exactly.
I
100%. The the reality is, for, with the exception of a couple of cycles, real estate has always gained in value.
yes, over time.
Um, Over time, it does. Sometimes it outpaces inflation. Sometimes it outpaces the stock market. Not usually, but it's a solid investment. And if people can understand that what they're investing in today is going to really come back in spades for them down the road. I had a client not too long ago. We had a conversation. There was a stalemate with the negotiation with the price. And he said to me, he goes, please tell me I'm crazy if you think I'm crazy. And for the first time ever in my career, I'm like, you're crazy.
Was he the seller or the buyer?
He was the buyer.
Okay. And
And
why was he crazy? Because of what reason?
because, there was a price differential of a few $1,000s. We'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
And I'm like, it's a few $1,000s. It equals something like 81 cents a month in your mortgage, something
Gotcha.
like that. And, and this is before the appraisal's done and everything else is done. So he went forward. He listened to, the advice, and he went for it, and he got the house, and they did the appraisal, and it came back like $12,000 over. And I'm like, you made X amount already before you even took the keys to the house.
Right.
So I'm sorry I called you crazy, but I can kind of see things and how they're going. And for a few $1,000s, don't lose out on that potential equity and the happiness for your family. You've got 3 kids.
Right.
You need a
Right.
place to live. You need to be realistic about it. So, yes, there are people in this world, in this country, that are stuck, and for good reason. And the answer to get them unstuck isn't clear yet.
Right.
I'm hoping that this cycle will deteriorate soon. It'll open up more opportunities for more people to become homeowners, and a more affordable rate to be able to do it. I don't want to see people not being able to buy their dream home, whether it's their first home or their very last home.
I agree. I think that home ownership, it's probably the biggest investment of your life, but it's also your home. It's where you come home. It's where you create memories. It's where you have your family and your holidays or whatever. It's your home. It's so much more than an investment. And my hope for my kids, and I'm going to really make an effort to make this happen for them. I'm not gonna be able to give them a lot of money to make it happen, but I'm going to really try to educate them to think big, to think long term. If you're going to be someplace for a while, like, what could you do to buy a home now if you're going to have it for a long time, rather than continue to rent and rent and rent and rent? Because if you're in it for the long haul and you can afford the monthly payment, there's nothing better. There's nothing better because you get to live there. You get to enjoy it, and there's, different tax write-offs. I'm not an accountant, but there are some things I know my accountant tells me, with your interest and everything else that you have. So yeah, that's my hope for my kids. And my hope.
And just another, because I know we're coming up on an hour, but there are so many programs out there, even though mortgage rates are escalated now, but there are so many programs out there. People still have this stuck in their minds. It's 20% down. No, there are so many programs that are 3% down, 5% down, 10% down. A VA, it could be 0% down. So, explore it, talk to an agent, talk to a mortgage person, someone that's knowledgeable, and, get some guidance from them instead of just staying on the curb and no, it's too expensive, I can't afford it. Take a look at what it really would cost you to get in the house and to maintain it, because that's a big cost too.
Yes, you're 100% right. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you, Keith. And it's not just about how much money you put down or the government loans versus the conventional loan. There's also a lot of programs. There's a lot of first-time buyer programs. There's community programs. There's a whole lot of incentives out there that in your area, speak to a lender in your area, speak to a couple if you have to, ask them. Tell them what your situation is. Tell them what you may be a first-time buyer. Some of them have salary caps, some of them don't. But there definitely are stuff out there just to get you in at a price that you can afford. Like I said, it's about that monthly number, and that monthly number includes your insurance and your property taxes. And you have to take into account maintenance and possible repairs. You know, you got to take that all into account when you buy a house. Otherwise, you're just going to end up in a bad situation, and nobody wants that.
I agree.
So tell me, where can people find you? I know that you told me when we were talking, Keith and I have never met. This is the first time we met. And I really am so glad you came on. Thank you for that. But you did tell me you specialize in helping people retire. Is that all over the country? Is that just Florida, South Carolina? Like, let people know where they can find you.
Well, I would love to say that I actually help them retire, but what I actually do is I help them find a retirement location for whatever it is that they like to do. So yes, it's called Retirement Life USA. It's a YouTube channel. Go there. There's tons of videos on all different aspects of, you know, people relocating for the retirement. You know, when we opened up today's show, you know, I said there was over 300,000 retirees that relocated last year. That's a lot of folks. So even though there's some stagnation in the inventory, there are people that are moving, and that's really what I do is I help these folks find their place that they want to call their next best home.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, I will also, I can put your information in the comments on the video for the replay for people. If you're watching this on the replay, and if you're watching this live, thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate, I'm still new at this and I still get very nervous. So I do appreciate your support. If you're watching on the replay, come next Wednesday night, because I think that might be the last one of 2024. I will be back in 2025, but I would love to see you the night before Thanksgiving. I'm very, very grateful and humble, and I appreciate if you would join me and whoever I have on, because it makes it more fun and more entertaining. And I just really appreciate your support. So thank you again, Keith, for coming on. I hope to talk to you more in the future. Maybe you'll come back again. And if I'm in Charleston, I will definitely find you. And if one day I get to retire, maybe I will ask you where I should go.
Caryn, thank you so much for having me here. It's been such a pleasure. And really, honestly, truly, I cannot tell you were nervous, not for 1 second.
You're so kind. If you would only see me, I'm even still.
You look like a pro doing this. I mean, it's a new career.
I've been doing real estate for 22 years and I've been making videos for about 4 years, but I wanted to start these lives. So I really want to give people real information in real time if they want to, and kind of experience it. So it's new for me and I just still get very, very nervous. So thank you. You're very kind.
Thank you very much. Take care.
All right, people.
Thanks,
have a good night. Enjoy